Welcome, students, to another episode of having a discussion and podcast with our students who are already there in the US. And today we have another student with us, our friend, Dr. Arsh Chowdhary, who has been a very old student as well as a friend of mine. We've been knowing each other for quite some time. Dr. Arsh Chowdhary has been in the US. He is currently a second year resident in the Albert Einstein College of Medicine, Montefiore in New York, Bronx. And today we would want to know and understand more about his side of the story as to how was his journey on the entire ride from the MBBS to the USMLEs to getting in process. And we'd like to know more about his journey. And we would really appreciate Dr. Arsh to shed some light on his experience overall. So I'm pretty sure that should definitely motivate you guys. Welcome, Dr. Ash.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Abhishek.
Great.
Happy to be here.
So it was, yeah, it's always a pleasure to talk you, interact with you, and have some more insights. So today we would want to present to our audience more insights about your side of the journey. So we would just want to start off with audience students. Dr. Arsh Chaudhary has been MBBS graduate from Srimati Kashibai Navle Medical College in Pune, and I believe you started your MBBS in what, 2016?
No, so I started in 2015.
2015, sorry. Okay.
Right.
So could you just tell me, like, when did you actually start off and you took a first baby step towards the USMLE preparation?
Right. So I think I probably approached this journey a little differently.
Mm-hmm.
Before I started MBBS, I knew I wanted to do residency in the US. So I
Mm-hmm.
planned to get an early start. I didn't manage to start in first year because first year MBBS it's always really hard. You're in a new system, a new setting. You take time to adjust.
Yeah.
You're just focused on like getting through first year. That's always a big adjustment. So I had started preparing for step one, probably the beginning of second year.
Yeah.
And yeah, I had the goal of giving step one at the end of second year, beginning of third year. But yeah, I mean that didn't work out. I finally gave it much later. But yeah, I started early. So I started at the beginning of second year.
Well, I equally keep on suggesting my students that the best time for anyone to start preparing is as early as, maybe the best time would be the second year. That's my generic suggestion for the student. But do you equally feel the same, having been gone through the process, that yes, this is really the right time and not just delay the process?
No, it's definitely good to start early. Yeah, start early. Start as soon as you can. Even if it's not second year, you can always start in first year too.
Yeah.
You may not be able to actually give the exam in third year. I mean, that's fine. That if it doesn't work out, everyone has different timelines. Their journey is different. But even though I didn't give step one in third year, I think like definitely studying for the USMLE, using the resources, using Kaplan, definitely helped me with my MBBS exams too. So even if it's not gonna help you to give the step one exam, the step two exams, it'll definitely come into use. And even if you start studying for it properly later, say in your intern year, in your internship year, you already have a good base. So it happens quicker because you've spent a couple of years during MBBS like building your foundation, building your concept.
And were you already predetermined that I have to go to the US, or you were like just taking a chance?
No, so yeah, no, so like I said, I already knew even before coming into MBBS, I had already decided I wanted to be in the US. So that was
Mhm.
always the goal. I mean, the goal never changed throughout MBBS, just the timeline changed a little, but yeah, the goal was always to come to the US.
Right. So, and you also knew that you wanted to be into the internal medicine only.
No, so my specialty, I decided a little later. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as you go through MBBS, as you start studying new subjects, when you go through the years, your likes and dislikes keep changing. I didn't know I wanted to do medicine. I think that I decided towards the end of MBBS, maybe third year, final year. But
Right.
yeah, the goal was always to get into the US for residency. But the field, the specialty, I decided towards the end of
Right.
MBBS. Yeah.
So talking about the specialty part of it, did you start with your research per se to enhance your profile and have some weightage onto it uh, at the beginning of MBBS, or after you decided, oh, now that it's the MBBS, I would now want to start off with, so the prerequisites for getting into it. So did you do any research? And if yes, when did you start? How did that journey of research, started
Yeah.
and infused into your preparations?
So I actually started doing research pretty early. I started doing research in this at the start of second year, along with preparing for step one. But I mean, there are different perspectives on this. So you don't really have to do high quality research. You don't have to get it published in really great journals. You're not expected to, because you're just starting your journey. You haven't even finished MBBS, let alone become a researcher. So even if it's simple, basic things like maybe just writing up a case report or conducting an observational study in your own hospital with the patients already there, it's simple things. And it's the point of it is not to get it published and keep adding to your CV and racking up publications. I think the point of research in during med school, during MBBS, is just getting used to the different kinds of research, where it's case reports, it's posters, it's trials, it's oral presentations, just getting a feel of everything. And to add to that, I don't really think research is really important for the application. I mean, everyone has it now on their application. It's kind of become a prerequisite now if you're applying. But yeah, I don't think it's really necessary to match into the US.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, students here, I would also want to add a couple of things. If you're looking out for a surgical branch, you will need to
Right.
have a different stand altogether. You will need to
Yeah.
have a series of, research and publications,
Yeah.
etc. But as I always keep on saying, if you're looking at for basic specialties like maybe internal medicine, family medicine, if you have a research and a publication, it's a wow factor. But even if
Yeah.
you don't have, especially if you're a final year or an intern and you don't have the time to, get into a research per se, I believe Dr. Arsh has already given us a good signal that if you have, that's a great thing to have. Not that he's discouraging you from not having it, but if you don't have, you should not really, just get uh, just baffled with the entire scenario. Right.
Yeah.
So overall, did you take a step three before you could apply, or you're now into the process? How's the scenario with you?
Right. So I ended up taking step three right before applying. So I think the portal for applications normally opens around September, and
Yeah.
it goes on till March, and then match week happens. So I gave my step three in August. You also have to be ECHMB certified. That's a prerequisite. So I got my certification a little bit before that. I studied, gave my step three in August. So I had my score before I submitted the application. I mean, thankfully it worked out, but yeah, I gave it before applying.
And if we may ask, what visa did you qualify for getting into the residency?
Oh no, so I don't require a visa. I'm not a visa requiring candidate.
Oh, you're
Yeah,
a
yeah,
citizen. Or okay, okay,
yeah,
great. Yeah, I mean, for those audience who do not know the importance, if you have a step three, you kind of, eligible to get into the pool of acquiring a H-1B work permit visa. So that was. So being an US IMG, did you think that really helped you with that extra edge over the non-US IMGs?
Honestly, I don't think so. I don't think so. This might be a different take on it, but I feel that it probably helps you to get a few more interviews, because you're a non-visa requiring candidate. You can apply to a few more programs, because some programs don't sponsor visas. but after you get the interview, everybody is judged equally in the interview. So it might help me get a few more interviews, it might help me apply to a few more places, but after that everyone's in the same level playing field. So after that, I don't think it really helps.
Right. Okay. Fine. And how many rotations did you do, and where all did you do?
Right. So I did 6 months of electives,
Mm-hmm.
and so I mean again, so I knew I wanted to get into residency in the US before I started MBBS. So I was planning beforehand. So I did a couple of electives in my third year and my final year. And then I
Mm-hmm.
did a few more during my internship year and a couple of electives after my internship year as well. So I did a total of six.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, you being a citizen, so you often travel to the US. So when you travel, you do a couple of them. You come back for your next year of MBBS, but
Mhm.
possibly that may not be practical enough for a non-US IMG who's already there in India, and or maybe any part of the world, and leaving the MBBS curriculum going to the US, we may also not be practical enough, maybe for the time per se, the cost per se, etc. So,
Right.
what message would you want to give to the students on an average, realistically? How many clinical rotations do you suggest? And at what stage? Would that be in the internship year, or would that be after a graduate, final year? How would you suggest?
Right. So a couple of things. So even though I did electives during my MBBS, I used my vacation to go to the US. So normally
Mm-hmm.
we have a break in the month of January before the new year starts. So I
Yeah.
used both my vacations. I went to the US for 1 month, came back. But so as far as timelines are concerned, I think that first of all there are a lot of prerequisites for university in hospital electives. Some of them, some universities require you to have passed the third year. Some require you to have finished final year. Some require you to have graduated, whereas some don't take graduates. So I think like I said, I don't think there is a correct time to
Mm-hmm.
go, but I would say definitely go. Don't go before second year. Probably go after second year, because second year is when you actually start going into the hospital for your own rotations back in med school. So even if you go before second year, you're not going to make the most out of it because you haven't studied medicine enough at that point to make the most out of those electives. Because the point of the electives is, yes, you will get a letter of recommendation at the end, but yeah, you also need to learn. There's also a learning curve that comes with those electives. So I would say definitely try and go after second year, but always look at the prerequisites. Be careful with them because universities have a lot of sort of factors that they take into consideration before accepting you for an elective.
Yeah, but again, as I
Yeah.
mentioned, that considering the cost factor, not all Indian students may be in a position to go maybe as early as second, third year or
Right.
so. So, do you
Right.
suggest that internship would be a very great time for them to go and do their electives, especially being a student when they know that the entire US is open to offer them an elective seat?
Yeah, you can definitely go during internship, but then you don't get vacation during internship. So you would have to take leave from your get permission from your hospital, take leave, and
And then
then
maybe an
your
extension.
internship,
Yeah,
yeah, it'll
extension.
get an extension. So it also depends on how amenable your like medical school is to giving an extension. So
Yeah.
you'd have to take that into consideration too.
Now, you also just mentioned that you did it as early as maybe a third year. How was your experience doing an elective in the third year versus an internship year? Because your introduction to the clinical subjects in the third year versus an
Yeah.
intern definitely would be poles apart. So, what
Yeah.
was your level of experience and exposure to the clinical side of it as early as third year versus an internship year?
To be honest, I think so. I went for one at the start of third year. I went for one at the start of final year. think I was pretty lost because you're not that exposed to clinical subjects that early. You just start going to the hospital. You just start learning how to take a history. So I mean, even though I went then, I was still pretty lost. And as an intern, obviously you know much more. You've given all your final year
Yeah.
exams. You've given practical exams. You've given theory exams. So I think if you also want to get some learning out of it, then yeah, intern year after intern year makes more sense. It gets a little challenging from like a knowledge point of view to go in like third year and final year.
Great.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So, moving on to the next stage, which would be your application. So, would you want to share insights on how many universities and hospitals do you think you must have applied
Oh,
at the
yeah.
time of application?
I think it was probably close to 200. 200 place. I mean, combination of university programs, community programs. Yeah. So the key is to apply as broadly as possible. Um,
Mhm.
Even if you have great scores, you think you have like a really, really good application, still apply as broadly as possible because it's getting more and more competitive each year. And you don't know where the interview is going to come from. If you, I mean, you have certain places in mind, certain targets, but I mean, the match is the match. So you don't know where the interview is going to come from. So my advice would be just, yeah, apply as broad as possible, cover
And
all
from
your bases.
200 and from 200 odd approximate hospitals that you applied to, how many interviews did you receive?
Yeah, so I had six interviews if I remember correctly. I
Hmm.
had six interviews, and yeah, so if you go online to the ACGME or the NBA, one of those websites, it gives you the statistics on how many number of interviews IMGs get and what the chance of matching is. Although it says that you need an average of probably 8 or 9 interviews to have 100% match. You just need one interview to match.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Now, most of the times when I interact with students, I come across a lot of students who are unnecessarily tensed. Oh, my med school is not, a part of VSLO, so I have to, how would I get an elective? And I just keep on specifying then, okay, fine, VSLO, having VSLO is great, but even if you don't,
yeah.
that's equally fine. And you've definitely done so many electives without or outside of the VSLO. So how and what would you want to add on here and give a message to the students that how they should not be worried about not being a part of the VSLOs?
Right. So a couple of things. So VSLO, I think it's a relatively new thing that the ACHME has introduced. So I
Mhm.
did most of my electives before VSLO actually came into action. But again, so I went for my electives during the pandemic. So it was really difficult to get university electives. Most of the hospitals were shut. They weren't accepting students. I think it's gotten better now. They've opened up again. They're letting international students come in. But there are all these resources online. There are lists online of universities that don't require VSLO. There are a lot of these options too. And even if you don't get university inpatient electives, you can always do outpatient electives, and they don't need VSLO as well. So that's not really a barrier. I mean, you may not get to go to the university you really want to go to do an elective, but there are plenty of options that don't need BSL.
Right, right, right. Now, with you, we definitely would want to know and understand more of the residency life of it. And you being now into the second year, being a senior resident, how's the life there? And what do you think that students should expect? Because sitting here, it's definitely a rosy picture that, okay, fine, I'm going to go to the US, being a fancy doctor out there. But the grass is always greener on the other side. But I would want you to walk through the students trying to know and understand the real life of a resident out
Yeah.
there.
So, I mean, first of all, you need to understand that residency is hard. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter where you do it, doesn't matter if you do it in India, doesn't matter if you do it here. Residency is always going to be hard. It's a new environment. You've never been in an environment before. You're not used to working those kind of hours. It's a high pressure environment. You need to be on your toes 24/7 when you're in the hospital because the stakes are real now. You're not in medical school anymore. You have real responsibilities. You have patients to take care of. You are answerable to your patients now. So if you come in with that mindset, it'll be a little bit easier to settle into residency. Um, I think it also depends on where you match. There are certain states that are definitely more busier than the others. They have a higher patient load than the others. New York is definitely one of them. I think New York is probably the busiest place to work in the whole country. But again, like coming from India, we're used to the patient load. Like we deal with much more in MBBS in our intern year that we do over here. But I think you definitely have to be prepared. Just if you come in with the mindset that it's going to be hard work, I think you'll settle in much faster.
Right. Now, now this particular discussion of ours would definitely reach to maybe a remotest place, especially maybe a student who's in a government medical college. Uh, the current setup here in the government medical college, especially with the kind of infrastructure or remote places, they would definitely be molded in these 5 years into a specific manner. And if they're looking forward for a residency in the US,
Right.
can should they be expecting a big major change and a shift, or maybe a cultural shock in terms of patients here versus the patients there? How would you evaluate both the worlds?
No, it definitely is a big adjustment. So I also did my MBBS from a medical college that was in the outskirts of Pune. So
Hmm.
it was a rural area. It was the outskirts of Pune. The differences are so the I think communication is a big thing in the US. We spend a lot of time talking to our patients, explaining why we're ordering these tests, comforting them in times of need. So one of the things that the United States like values a lot is patient communication, and another thing is also professionalism. Um, you have to be on time every day, can't be late. I think those are also prerequisites back in India. But I think the major differences between probably doing a residency or just doing medical school in India between doing a residency here are the fact that your patients will ask you a lot of questions about what, like, why you ordering these tests, why are you giving me these medications, what should I expect, what should I look out for. They always want to know more about what they're going through. So you need to be ready for that. You need to be ready for communication. And another thing that the US also values a lot is documentation.
Hmm.
Whether that's in the EMR or you're documenting on paper. That's a big change than what we do back home. We document everything. Like we document, sometimes we even document patient conversations. So, for example, like if you are offering a certain treatment to a patient that you know is going to be beneficial for them, but for some reason they don't want it, they want to try something else, we document that too. So documentation is a big thing. Patient communication is a big thing. I think those were the major differences or the major cultural changes of practicing in this country. Yeah.
But I believe you also definitely get exposed to these kind of working styles during your electives that you do. So that really
Yeah.
kind of conditions you well for the future residency that you're going to do.
Right, right. So you do. If you're lucky enough to get an elective where they let you use the EMR, they let you interact with patients, have discussions with them. Yeah, you definitely get little exposure into the world of how medicine operates in the US. So that's definitely helpful. Um, yeah.
Right. How would you describe the life of a doctor in India versus US in terms of, for example, here in India,
Mhm.
doctors are god and goddesses out here. So you say anything to them, they'll just buy it. But in the US, you got to be extremely careful and more specific. Otherwise, you're definitely subject to lawsuits and penalization. So, so how would you want to describe this, and what are those things that you would want any doctor or an IMG to be more careful and specific about during your residency life?
Right. So I think again, it all comes down to communication. That's
Mm-hmm.
that's one thing that the US values a lot. Patients know. I think the one thing that I probably took away from intern year is don't underestimate how much a patient knows about their own health conditions. They know a lot. They know what they're going through. They know which medications they're on. They know what the alternatives are. They know a lot about their conditions. They read a lot more. So you need before you talk to them, you need to be prepared to answer questions. You need to know your material well before you go in for a patient interaction. Um, you need to be really careful. You need to be really careful what you say. You have to be careful of using the right terminology, addressing the patients correctly. So I think in the end, it all boils it all boils down to communication in the end. But the electives definitely help because you get a little bit of experience of talking to patients, explaining their health conditions, answering their questions, addressing their concerns. Yes, the electives definitely help, but yeah, it's a big change, and you have to be prepared for it. I don't think
So,
we are necessarily taught this during med school.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now, you being a senior there, was there any such episode or a scenario that you came across and you're like, oh shucks, now I'm into a very dark spot? Uh, any such memory that you have, or any such incident that happened that, oh, that's worth discussion in this particular discussion right now?
I would say probably rotating in the ice like in the IC, like the intensive care units. It's always challenging. Not from the point of view of the medicine that you'll pick up, you'll learn that over the next 3 years. But in the ICU, you have to have a lot of end of life discussions with family members, sometimes with the patients themselves, and they expect you. They don't expect you to start doing this from day one, but they expect you to take the initiative and do it. No one is going to hold your hand in these situations, and we're not really taught how to have these conversations with our patients or with their family members. So I think that was something I found challenging, because I still struggle with it sometimes, having these kinds of conversations because they're serious conversations, they're emotional conversations, and that's probably something I found really difficult during my first year.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Um, Moving on, just wanted to know and understand. Now that I'm saying that life in India for the PG residents is easy, or life is easy for the US residents, but I'm pretty sure you are aware of the PG life here in India. How would you want to differentiate between the US life versus the India life? In, of course, in terms of your, daily
Right.
schedules and hectic, overall period. So,
Right. So I think one of the major differences between residency in both countries is we follow a shift based system. So you have assigned shifts. The shifts are, they can be 4 hours long, 6 hours long, 8 hours long, even 12 hours long. But it's a fixed shift. Suppose my day starts at 6:30 in the morning, and I'm doing a 10-hour shift or a 12-hour shift. After 6:30 in the evening, when I sign out to the night team, the team that's going to come in to replace me, I am not responsible for anything anymore. Like I am off the clock. I can go home. I can go out. I can do whatever I want. So I think that's a big difference between residency in India and residency here. I mean, the hours may still be long, but we do follow a shift-based system, and we also have assigned, I think we have assigned holidays once a week. I think that's also different than residency in India. Like we get, sometimes we get the weekend off, some rotations we get 1 day a week off. We also have fixed vacations for the whole year. You typically
Mhm.
get an average of 4 weeks off the whole year. You take it in like 2 week increments, 2 week intervals. So I think scheduling wise, that's probably a big difference between both the countries. Yeah.
Okay. Do you know of, or do you want to share one such uh, episode in while your first year of residency where it was like, wow, that's the greatest, you know, episode that you had, that, or maybe a moment that you had that, yes, and the worst one, oh God, I shouldn't have been here. So do you have like opposite ends, any such thing that you think of or you would want to share with us? One sweet
Yeah,
memory and one worst memory.
sure. So I think start with the good one, the good and the good memories. So I think I mean, if I think about it, I don't think I have one in particular, but I genuinely like the system, or the system of education here in this country. It follows. It's very different from how we're taught in India. I think they focus more on, like, they have an application based way of teaching, which I like more. I enjoy more. They give you a lot of autonomy in the hospital. They let you present your topics. I mean, your whatever you're interested in from day one. They encourage a lot of discussions on a day to day basis. I mean, I remember one of my floor rotations. Floor rotations are typically hectic because you're in day out. I had like a 45 minute, I wouldn't say argument, but like a 45-minute discussion with the attending about a particular topic, about why this patient we should treat differently. The attending had a different opinion. But yeah, I enjoy those kinds of discussions because it really allows you to, like, think critically, think for yourself, make your own decisions, make your own mistakes, and learn from them. So yeah, again, I think going back to it, I don't. I mean, I don't have a particular memory that stands out, but I mean, I like this way of learning. I like this way of teaching, and that's something that I think back and look upon the first year and think, yeah, this was nice. This was good experience.
Right.
Yeah,
And any
yeah.
bad moment or an experience that, oh shit, I committed a blunder or a mistake, I shouldn't have done that, or something of that sort? Not necessarily you should, but in case if you have.
Yeah, so I mean, at the top of my head, I can't. I mean, I can't really think of anything at the top of my head, but I think something that you should be careful of, and this is something that the culture over here that they take or they consider very important is is information, like confidential information. You have to be very careful of what you reveal to the patient, what you reveal to the family members, because just because a family member is with the patient the entire stay in the hospital, that does not mean they want their family to know everything about their health conditions. So there have been a couple of moments where I say, okay, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Maybe I should ask the patient before if you're comfortable with me sharing this information in front of your family members. So again, they consider privacy very important, confidentiality very important, and health information is very, very highly protected over here in this country.
Mhm. Oh, okay. That's a useful insight, I would say. And now that you are into the second year of residency, I know it's way too early, just barely about
Yeah.
a couple of months that you've started. But what should typically a student expect a difference between a first year versus the second year? How different is going to be a second year versus the first year which just went by?
Mhm. Right. So I think there's a huge learning curve between first year and second year. I would say second year and third year, not so much. You do the same things you were doing, but yeah, first year and second year is a huge difference. So in first year, so they call, I mean, they consider first year as interns. I mean, they call interns over here. I mean, you are residents, but they call first year interns. So you're always practicing under a resident. You're always running things by the resident. You're not making any decisions by yourself. You're heavily supervised by the resident, by the attending. um, you're still responsible for your own patients. You're responsible for those decisions, but if anything goes wrong, god forbid, the resident is the one who will eventually be responsible, because the resident is the leader of the team.
Right.
So first year, I think first year you're mostly getting used to the whole system. You're getting used to how medicine is practiced here, getting used to taking a history. But second year is very different. Second year, you're running a team. So typically on the floors or even in the ICU, the floors, the days, the nights, you have interns with you. So it's your responsibility to teach them what you learned in first year. It's your responsibility to make sure they're not feeling too burdened, they're not feeling too stressed. You are responsible for the whole team, you are responsible for making decisions. So I think that's why the learning curve is very steep when it goes from first year to second year, and you have a lot more responsibility. And in the short 1.5 to 2 months I've been a senior, I've enjoyed it. I mean, I like having a team. I like making my own decisions. I mean, you do have to run things by the attending, but you have a lot more autonomy as a second year, and it gives you the opportunity to practice medicine the way you want to. And so I've been enjoying it. I've been enjoying being a senior.
So, do
Yeah.
you have any interns reporting into you this year?
Yeah, so I actually started. I mean, right now I'm on an elective, but I started my first 2 weeks of second year in the ICU. So I did have interns working with me. So typically, how it works is when new interns come in. I mean, like how I was 1 year ago. You don't know the system. You don't. It's very overwhelming at first. It takes a while to get used to it. So as a senior, at least the first few months, you're taking care of your own patients. You're also taking care of the interns' patients, because they're still learning. They're still learning how everything works. It's a lot more responsibility. It's more. So I think the one big difference between a first year and a second year is, I think a second year is more of a it's more of a mental thing, more of a mental game. First year, you do a lot of the grunt work, because you're talking to families, you're writing your notes, I mean, sometimes you're drawing labs. So it's more physical work, but as a second year, it's more of a mental thing. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's definitely worth all the efforts that you've taken so far.
Yeah.
Finally, just wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you must be having plans to get into a fellowship as well. So have you decided of what specialty you want to get into?
I have. So I mean, I had a couple of interests before getting into residency. So I think my first option was hematology, oncology, and my second option was rheumatology.
Hmm.
But when I started residency, that all changed. Yeah. I think you have an idea of how the field is going to be before you start, but then when you finally get into residency and you
Sure.
experience it firsthand, everything changes. So I decided my fellowship, I think a couple of months into residency, and now I'm more or less fixed that this is what I want to do. I want to pursue like pulmonology and critical care.
Okay.
So that
Okay.
yes, that's a 3 year fellowship after medicine.
Yeah. Okay. Um, Do you have any insights or any information on the transition between a residency to a fellowship? If any student is interested, how do you think would the approach be? Would that be a direct admission, or I mean, how would the admission process work to a transition between a residency to a fellowship?
Right. So I think there are a lot of factors in play here. Since I'm a non-visa requiring candidate, I don't know the technicalities of how many years you need to do it on if you're on J1 or what you have to do if you're on an H1. But um, you can. So if you want to start fellowship right after you finish third year, you have to apply towards the end of second year and the beginning of third year, because that's when the application fellowship application season will start. Then you'll have your interviews, like it's the match all over again. So you'll have your
Mhm.
interviews, and you typically know where you matched midway through your third year. So then you can start immediately after third year. But that's not the only way to do it. A lot of residents take breaks. I know a lot of them on a J1 visa, some of them do their waiver before applying for a fellowship. So they'll work for 2 or 3 years and then they'll apply for a fellowship. Some of them do their fellowship first, then do their waiver. Some of them just take a break for 1 year and apply for fellowship after that, or just work as a hospitalist for a year. So that there's no one way to go about it. There are a lot of
Mhm.
permutations and combinations, and I think a lot of it also has to do on which visa you end up getting as a resident, whether it's J1 or H1B.
Okay. And just like any other doctors in the US who are always involved in the CMEs, have
Right.
you also started getting into the CME, or it's there's some time for you to start that route?
Right. By CMEs, yeah, you mean going to conferences?
Yeah,
What?
the
Yeah.
continuous medical education. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So, so it's a little different over here. So I've actually like been to a conference already. I went to one in my first year. That was a couple of months ago. So since I want to get into pulmonology and critical care, I went to the American Thoracic Society's annual meet. It was in San Diego this year, earlier in May. But I went to present my work. So like wrote up an abstract, I submitted it. It got accepted as a poster. So I went there to present my work, and we do like in this field there's another conference coming up in October, pretty soon actually. It's called CHEST, so the American College of Chest Physicians. So these are the
Mhm.
two like big conferences, big societies in the field of critical care. So I did submit another one of my projects to this conference, and it got accepted. So I'm going to go to present it again. But a lot of it depends on your residency schedule. So if you do have projects, or if you do have abstracts or oral presentations that have been accepted to these conferences, then your residency program will let you go for a day, for 2 days. But a lot of it also depends on coverage, because if you go to these conferences, you're not going to your shift, right? So someone has to cover your shift. So
Right.
unless you have like a compelling reason to go, like you're presenting your work, or you're giving a talk, or you're going for a workshop, then your residency program will be happier letting you go. So yeah, a lot of it has to do with your shift schedules and your daily work and your work conflicts as well.
Yeah. That was quite insightful, I would say.
Yeah.
So, finally, what message would you want to give to our audience who are just, stepping into the world of medicine, MBBS, maybe second year, final years? Is there any message that you would want to give to the students?
It feels like a lifetime ago when I started this journey. But so I think first of all, it's a long journey. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of commitment and hard work. It's not only about the exams, the step exams. The step exams is actually a small part of the whole journey. You have to do your electives. If you, I mean, you can do research that will also help your application. And I personally felt that the application part of it was tougher than actually giving the step exams, because we've never done this before. Like, I've never written a personal statement before. I've never filled a CV that's so extensive. I've never gotten letters of recommendations before, worked in these environments before. So all of like those aspects were very new, challenging. And coming from India, we've given exams before. Like, we give exams every 2 weeks. So I personally
Mm.
felt that the application part of it was actually tougher than the exam part of it. But yeah, so that's one aspect of it. And the second one is, yeah, again, coming back to it, it's a long journey. It takes time. You have to be patient. I think that's one of the things that I learned, going through this whole process. It takes a while. You have to give 3 exams. You have to do your electives. You have to fill the application. It doesn't even end there, because then you have to go through the whole process of giving interviews, then wait till the match comes out. So you have to be really, really patient. But if this is something you really, really want, I mean, it's worth it in the end.
Absolutely. And you yourself being a Kaplan student at one point in time, what would you want to advise to the students in terms of the USMLE's Kaplan experience, etc.?
Right. So yeah. So I think I used Kaplan, I think early in my second year and my third year, to help me prepare for the steps. Again, I had the goal of giving it in third year. That didn't end up happening, but I think it's really useful to use these resources when you're doing MBBS, when you're actually studying these subjects like anatomy, physiology, your second year subjects, your third year subjects. It really, really helps with your concepts. I genuinely felt that conceptually, even giving like our theory exams in MBBS, giving those exams were much easier. So even though I didn't achieve my goal of giving the step exams during MBBS, MBBS was easier for me while studying for the steps, while using these resources while studying for it.
Well, I believe you're one of the very few students that I've come across who made a very bold statement that MBBS was really easy for me. Otherwise, you know it. All students like it's very tough kind of thing. But nevertheless, it was really fun chatting with you, Dr. Arsh. It was really nice, and I'm pretty sure it was insightful for all our students. We really sincerely thank you so much for the time here. We wouldn't want to, hold up much of your time right now, but thank you so much for your time, and we really appreciate it, truly. Thank you.
Of course, thank you for having me.
Okay. Subscribe to this channel, tell your friends about it, share this channel with them, and yeah, don't forget to press the bell icon so that you get to know you're the first ones to be notified of the upcoming episode